is your relationship with time? Are you wired and tired, stressed and overwhelmed, busy and going nowhere? Or just want to scale your business? Welcome to Take Back Time with your host, Penny Zenker. Penny focuses on books, strategies, tools, and tips to help you work smarter and approach your time more strategically. As a result, you can have more energy, focus, and get more done in less time. Be more efficient and effective. Get ready to take back time.
Hello, and welcome to Take Back Time. My name is Penny Zenker, and I'm your host. And I am excited on this show to bring you different ways of thinking, different perspectives on how to take back time, because it's not just what you do with your time, it's how you show up for your time, and it's about thinking and acting more strategically. And in doing so, we have to get outside of our box. So today, I'm excited to have Dave Schwartz with us, and he is going to give us an unorthodox perspective. And I say unorthodox because basically, from a young age, he combined the two things that he loved, which was computers and horse racing. Now imagine that. And he created a 30-year business that's been an internet business before the internet even began. So we've got a lot of knowledge and insight, and he has a super passion for productivity. So without further ado, Dave, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Penny. I'm thrilled to be here.
So, you said something in the intro that I thought was really interesting. You said something about being unbelievably organized. So tell me what you said and what you mean by that.
Sure. Well, when I started in business 30 years ago, I produced a piece of software, and it was kind of overnight, it was successful, relatively speaking, to where I had been before. And about 15 years in, I realized I was spending 70 hours a week maintaining the software and servicing customers, and one time I actually had an office with a staff, and I have a virtual staff now. But my point was 70 hours a week of work is not what one calls having a good family life.
Right.
You know what I mean?
So you bit off a little more than you could chew, is what you're saying.
Well, you can do it for a while, but it's not what you want for a lifestyle. And so I remarried 24 years ago, and about 6 months in, my wife says, you're working into all hours of the night.
Mm-hmm.
Don't you think you ought to join the family? And so,
ouch, right?
Yeah, but she was right.
Call.
But she was right.
Did you say you don't want to be divorced a second time, so you better?
Well, actually, what she said was she would scream upstairs, "It's time for the marital bed." And so, but the funny thing was, I was so much better because I'd always lived this life that was work was the whole center of the universe, you see.
Well, and I want to stop you there because, I think that there are a lot of entrepreneurs that can relate to that because we have it's like a curse and a gift at the same time, our sense of urgency, and it keeps us working all the time because of the impact that we want to create, because of the freedom that we are searching, for so many different reasons. And I can relate to you because I was in technology as well before this life. And I didn't like to leave things undone. And so that was the worst thing for me as a product developer at the time, because I couldn't put it down until it was done. So I think a lot of people can relate to that. So we're really interested in hearing how and what you do now to get away from that challenge.
Well, first of all, there's a saying among programmers that being a programmer means never having to say you're finished. And so it just goes on and on. So I woke up with this wonderful woman who said, yeah, this is not how we raise a family. And there wasn't strife, but the point, she was right. And so I started to work more to a schedule. And at first I was completely out of my element. But most programmer types, we crave structure in our life, organization, not only in our code, but in what happens in our day. And so for me, the first thing I did was I still work 70 hours a week, but they were more humane hours. And so then I discovered productivity. Now, being
Well, isn't structure part of productivity? Just to back up a second, didn't you already discover that a little bit?
Well, sure.
You dip your toe in?
Well, and as a programmer, processes are part of the system. The thing is, I took that part of productivity as for granted because I'd been doing it for so long, even in the early years.
But a lot of people who are listening don't have that, right? They're not in programming. So that's why I'm pointing that out, is that that is an important part of productivity. And for people who are listening, start there, right? Especially with people working from home right now who aren't used to working at home. Structure, right? Like you said, that structure, that adding structure to your day and starting and ending at certain times or having certain work hours is a big part of productivity. You might have taken that for granted as a first step, but for people who are, not used to that, or even creative thinkers, structure is supportive, and it doesn't limit, but actually will open up opportunity.
It's interesting that you bring this up, because the thing that I got, forgive me, but I didn't know who you were. And then I ran across your book and your I know. And then your
oh my God!
And then your TED Talk, and then your TED Talk. And I've listened to some of your podcasts, and all of a sudden it's like, where has this woman been? Right?
I'm trying to get out there. I'm working on it.
Oh no, it's not you, it's me. Because anyway, but you see, you really bring up a good point, because as a programmer, or whatever it is that we do, everybody has things that they do that they take for granted. For example, when my wife and I first got married, we had a business struggle going on, and somebody had replaced our computers, and they frankly weren't working. And I was screaming into the phone, and I then, after we were done, he's going to come over and fix them, and I slammed the phone down, and because my wife Beth's experience with her ex-husband, she thought, oh my God, now the monitors are going to fly through the windows.
Oh, right.
And I said, let's go to dinner, very calmly. And she was shocked, right? Well, the point is, from programming, there's one thing that a programmer learns, and that is nothing ever works the first time.
Oh my God, that is so true. And it doesn't work according to the instructions that you read that tell you this is the way it's supposed to work.
That's right. And so, by the way, my hero, for those of you, pardon me, old enough to remember, is Wile E. Coyote, the guy who's always chasing the Roadrunner.
Yeah.
Right? Because he should be the patron saint of programmers, because nothing ever works, but he never stops trying. The
That's
difference
a great
is
analogy.
I love it.
That.
Yeah, he sits on my desk. I'll have to send you a picture of Wiley. So I started to deconstruct productivity. And I did it, first of all, and like you said, until this moment, I never realized structure was a given to me. That's the impact of people, that when you're exposed to people who know what they're talking about, and suddenly you say, oh yeah, I got that, right? So the most important thing is, if you're working 70 hours a week, you don't have a business, you have a job.
Absolutely.
And so now...
And a bad boss, I might add.
Yes. And now I love my life. I mean, I work, a big week for me would be 25 hours. And I've got a set of, I'm just going to run through a bunch of things. I hope today we're going to talk about how to change, biggest changes. I mean, we've all read, if you're a productivity person, I'm assuming people have read your book. They've read, the one that gets quoted to me a lot is Getting Things Done.
Right.
Oh, it's a great book. It puts things in perspective, and you feel really good, like you're relieved, but it doesn't solve the problem of getting things done. It just lets you feel better.
And it solves it creates an organization, a process.
A structure, exactly. That's the way I see it. And so there's several things that I think are really important. And the most important of all of them is you got to kill perfection.
Absolutely. Well, that's why in my book, I talk about the productivity curve, and I talk about outside of the zone is perfectionism and procrastination. So absolutely, perfection. So how do you do that?
Well, I was pathological about it, okay? I mean, I'm the guy that, first of all, I'm a visual person. I have to have something, a printed version of what today looks like, okay?
But isn't that a little bit of perfection just to,
Yes.
like if you've got to have an exact layout of what your day looks like, what, that sets you up for if it doesn't look like that. I'm just, we're just.
Oh, you're right. And that's why I don't plan. I do appointments, of course, but I have things that need to get done. It's on my whiteboard right in front of me. But here's the key thing. I forced myself to deal with an intentional misspelling of the day of the week on the page that I printed. You have no idea.
So you print Monday incorrectly just so that you give yourself permission not to be perfect. Is that what you're saying?
Oh, and it tortured me. I literally thought I was OCD.
Oh, that's funny because that's fantastic because I would like to say that I purposely misspell things in my emails just so that I can accept my imperfection and everyone else can accept my imperfection.
Yeah, try to sell that though, right?
I'm trying. I'm still trying, but I still get...
Okay, so killing perfection, all right? First of all, I'm sure the audience, if you're old enough, you know who a guy named Dan Kennedy is. And Dan Kennedy, I know Dan Kennedy's stuff so well, I can channel him, okay, when I need to in a whiteboard session. So he said at some point something like, you have to be happy with 83% of perfect. I believe that's what he said, 83%. And he said, if somebody else is doing it for you, you need to be happy with 70%, which gradually improves up to about 80% as they learn what you want and what you demand. Okay, so I glommed on to something really interesting. Imagine that you're somebody who says, I'm going to the gym this week. I'm going to go 6 days a week to the gym. And at the end of the week, you found that you went 5 days. Do you know how many people would say this week was a failure? Or they'd go Monday, Tuesday, miss Wednesday, and they say, well, that's it, I've blown it.
Right.
Okay, I'll start next Monday. Okay, so the first thing I took is if you went 5 days out of 6, you need to call this a win.
Absolutely.
In fact, you need to applaud yourself. And then I thought, well, a lot of people would only go to the gym 5 days anyway, and I lowered it to 4 out of 5. The point is to ask yourself, here's this task, this commitment that I've made that I'm going to do, and if I only did 4 out of 5, 7 out of 10, 2 out of 3, whatever the ratio is that you think is high enough, you set that as the definition of a win. See, we're so hard on ourselves, aren't we?
Totally. So what you're saying is that we can have the win and then we can have the over and above the win, right? So,
oh, yes.
So that we have an area of celebration so the win is like the minimum. Because I always talk about how we talked about kill perfection. Well, progress is perfection. So that means that if we did better than we did last week, if we learned something that we can improve, if we can stop for a moment to celebrate progress, like you said, then we're going to create traction and we're going to continually add to it versus become a series of quitting.
Absolutely. And the thing is this, the perfectionist in us and anybody who creates, if you really care about what you're creating, the perfectionist in us just naturally keeps bubbling to the top. Just like in what you said. So a win is like, okay, and you strive for more than a win. And I suggest, no, you don't.
Okay.
And let me give you an example.
Yeah, well, so I'm trying to understand what you were saying in your example. So yeah, give us an example to...
Okay, so let me move on and then I'll cover this because I think it's perfect. I've got a set of rules that build my productivity to the level that it is. And I'm going to give you a number. I produce at a level of 3.5x what I used to produce at.
Okay.
I have this system, and it is not for sale currently, but it's the new business I'm going to go into. I have a daughter who is a Brailleist by trade. She does contract Braille for colleges universities, high schools, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And I taught her the system. And took me we met like twice a week for, maybe, I don't know, 10 weeks, 10 weeks. And at the end of 6 months, honestly, I will say I kind of forgot about it. She was out there doing her thing. She says, Dad, I'd like to share with you what I've done. And I said, okay. She said, when I started, I was making $22 an hour. Now I make $72 an hour. I have not changed my pricing. I have the same customers. I'm simply producing faster.
Mm.
Now that's real productivity. It's
Absolutely.
not just and so that's what I'm trying to accomplish. And so I have a tendency to take over things because I'm structured. So I realize.
Okay, so let's talk. You want to talk about your rules, Dave's rules?
Yeah. Okay. First rule, and these are just the important ones. All right. Week is Monday through Friday. Never schedule work on the weekends. Now, when I say this, people say, oh no, you have to work on I said, I didn't say you couldn't work on the weekend.
Right. Just don't schedule it. I said
you never schedule it, all right?
Don't set any expectations that you're going to do that, and it gives you more flexibility.
That's right. And if you don't get work done during the week, okay, you forget it. You add it when you make next week's plan, which is done on Friday.
Right.
For me, it's Friday at noon because I'm done Friday at noon. It becomes part of next week's plan. Now, by the way, part-time people who are doing a business, they've got a day job and they're trying now that obviously they're going to have a different situation.
Right.
But the key point is you must have 2 consecutive days that are unscheduled. This is very, very important. The reasoning now about this business about if it didn't get done this week, it just becomes part of next week. Okay. The reasoning is 2 ways of looking at this. Quote, I have to work this weekend to catch up. Okay. I have to work this weekend to catch up. Versus if I choose to work this weekend, I'll be ahead of next week. It's a mindset. I know you're into changing frameworks, I think you call it, right? The framework of things. I use the phrase reframe.
Well, framework just means a structure.
Sure.
Framework is structure to work within. So that's all that is. I also believe about reframing. So it's what you focus on. And I mean, like you said, in my TEDx, that's one of the main things that I talk about is reframing.
Right. And so reframing is so important. Ask yourself this, which would you rather look at the coming weekend with? Would you rather say, well, I've got so much work to do this weekend, or if I choose to work this weekend, then I'm going to be ahead of next week, right? One is extra credit and the other one feels like a penalty.
And I'm in total agreement that you should have that time to decide. I also believe that you need to take a break and that working all the way through the weekend is also going to put you even further behind because you're chasing it as opposed to thinking and acting smarter. You're just busy. You're all over the place, right? So I agree that that'll give you also some distance to plan and really see what really needs to be done and not waste your time on a bunch of stuff that probably doesn't really need to be done.
Distractions are the enemy of productivity. Go to distractionquiz.com and find out your distraction profile. Are you a time zombie or a hamster? Take this free distraction quiz today to rate your ability to focus on what keeps you from being a wizard. Go to distractionquiz.com.
The other thing that comes from this, like, for example, once you train yourself at this, I don't work every weekend, but usually by Sunday afternoon, I'm so hungry to get a jump start, right? Now, like I said, my target is 20 hours a week. That's about what I want to work, okay? Never do I schedule more than 4 hours of work. Now, remember, I'm talking productive work, okay? I never schedule more. The absolute maximum would be 6 hours in a day. And I do it in terms of time blocks. People may say, well, see, you're just lollygagging about there. Last week on Monday, I started my 33rd book. It went to the printer on Friday. That's the kind of stuff. that when you reframe this, you start to discover what's been underneath all along, that if you just give yourself a chance and you hone this system. Another thing that ties into this is the Seinfeld calendar. Everybody knows that story. You know that story, right? The Seinfeld
I'm not
calendar.
sure. Tell us.
Okay, so Seinfeld, the story is that Seinfeld was struggling like writers do with, and by the way, nobody would ever confuse me with a real author, with a real writer, okay? But my books sell. Seinfeld calendar, he was struggling with writing, so he committed to getting up every single day and writing. I believe it was for an hour, but I don't know. He just said write every day. And he'd mark it on his calendar with an X. Well, after 864 days or whatever it is, that calendar has become the most important thing in his life. And all of a sudden, I mean, that's not what I want. I want to live a life that is not based on something on the wall determining whether or not, I mean, I want my children, my family, my life to be important as opposed to X marks on a calendar.
Right.
And so one of the important things is to learn how to stop being perfect, like the Monday thing. But also, if you've gone to the gym 6 days in a row, this week, previous week, and the previous week, don't allow yourself to go 6 days now. You need to, because all you're doing is you're encouraging perfection. And eventually it gets back to that pride you take in. Well, I've done 47 days in a row at the gym. You're still buying back into perfection. And it actually hurts you.
Well, I mean, I would beg to differ in some of those things. I think that it depends, again, on your mindset around it. Are you beating yourself up if you don't go? Are you know what I mean? So if it supports you and it puts you in the right mindset and you want to go every day because it is actually a positive routine that gives you positive results, then I would say then you're not a slave to it. You're doing it because it makes sense for you. And I think what I hear you saying is just don't be a slave to habit that's not supporting you. Is that?
A better way to say it is my personality type, and I contend that there's a lot of people with a similar personality type. We have a tendency to glom on to perfection, and suddenly it becomes the thing that's important to us.
Right. I get it. And then we beat ourselves up if we don't meet that. And then that in itself is...
Well, you're back where you were before.
Is part of the struggle with perfectionism. Yeah.
Agreed. And overwhelm was always a big problem for me. And in fact, I gave it a name. I call it parked car syndrome. And what that means is I have so much to do that I'm paralyzed.
So how do you deal with that? So, I mean, we've talked about, I mean, I don't know how many rules we've gone through. You said that never schedule on the weekend. You said
kill perfection.
That's all part of kill perfection.
No, kill perfection was first. Week is Monday through Friday. Don't schedule on weekends. That's number 2.
Okay.
All right. And so overwhelm is caused by not so much how much we have to do. We think it is, but the truth is it's caused because we have developed our own personal culture of 0 to 60. We get the car out on the road and bam, we are pedal to the metal and we're going 60 miles an hour. And then something happens and we suddenly park the car. Now we're going 0 again.
Right.
And so, again, I call it parked car syndrome. And there's 2 things that we need to come out of that. The first one is we need a process for getting our car back on the road quickly. Because if we are prone to overwhelm, it's part of who we are. We need to forgive ourselves for that, accept it. And I have a lifetime behind me before I whipped this. I had a lifetime of 10-day programs and 20-day programs and 30-day programs, and many of them went great. So what happens after I've been producing for, say, 30 days?
Right.
And I'm cranking along, and I keep going. And then it's 45 days, and then it's 58 days, and then I crash, and mentally I say, well, failed again.
Right.
And so we wind up building our own culture of failure. So for me, this was huge. So the two things we need, one is a process. First of all, we have to accept the fact that this is who we are, and it's not going to go away. We just want them to we don't want them to happen as often. And that's about throttling the car, so to speak. Us being the metaphor being of the car's speed is our productivity. So the first thing we need is we want to spread that out. And the second thing is that when we do park the car, we want to get it back on the road as quickly as possible. Those are two different processes. So there's the throttling process, and there is the process of restarting. And we could do a whole segment on that particular process.
For sure. We're just giving people the high level because then they're going to join your Facebook group, right? Which you're going to be teaching some of these concepts, right?
Absolutely. And because I think we're going to talk about coronavirus in another segment, but this is a great time to be teaching and giving for free.
Absolutely.
So, okay, one more thing which is really critical is work blocks are events. What I mean by that is if you were, let's say when you were in school, maybe you played sports or maybe you were a thespian. The point is practice. There's practice and there's games. There's rehearsals and there's opening night. A work block is a game or an opening night. Think of how you felt before a game or before a performance and you had butterflies. It was important to you. It mattered. That's the state you need to be in when you sit down to work.
And you said you're visual. So do you use like some sort of picture or visual that gets you in that state?
Every morning, okay, people in the high-tech world have a tendency to be aware of what's called the morning stand-up.
Yep.
And in a morning, for those of people who don't know, in a morning stand-up, the leader of the company or the organization or the group
team
or whatever,
yes,
stands up and basically I actually did a couple of consulting gigs where the entire company would be present in an auditorium. And it was important that everybody was standing.
Yeah.
And one by one, the boss would simply go to each of the department heads. And it was like, first of all, what is the status of what you're doing? Is it green, a green light, a yellow light, or a red light? And give me a sentence or two to tell me where you stand. And 15, 20 minutes, you've gone through the whole day, the status of the whole company. So on my whiteboard in front of me, it literally says, Monday stand up. And Monday is misspelled. And it says, Penny podcast with 2 blocks next to it. That's an hour. And building content for 1,000 true fans. And that's 6 blocks. That's my day today.
Right.
Now, it's not usually quite that simple. Usually it's a little more specific. But that stares me in the face. And so those are events. And when I sit down to work when I'm talking to you here, my phone's not ringing. And if it did ring, I wouldn't answer. In fact, it's draped with a cloth so that I can't see who's calling. So I don't look over there and say, I wonder who that is, because that breaks my focus.
Right.
So Pomodoros, by the way, are a wonderful thing, but everything needs to be tweaked.
Well, it's a technique, right? It's really where time blocking, at least to my knowledge, started was this Pomodoro technique that was 25-minute segments to stay focused and then to take a break. And in the midst to be tracking distractions. So anybody can take a look at that. That's the Pomodoro technique. And you can make it 25 minutes, 45 minutes. But the key of what you're saying is to plan out your time and to block and schedule what you're going to be doing with that time. What's to schedule, Stephen Covey, I think it was to say, schedule your priorities. This helps you. It's a method to schedule your priorities.
Right. Absolutely.
So we're coming to the top of our time together. So is there anything else that you want to share with, or do you want to summarize those rules for the group before we sign off?
Yeah, I think I'll go back over those very quickly. The key point is you need some time off scheduled time off, the Monday through Friday thing. One other thing, very, very important. If you're doing this part-time, and let's say you want to start this business and you're trying to get it going, and you figure you got 12 hours, 12 good hours I can put in a week. That's great. Never schedule more than half. And the whole idea is what we're doing is creating an environment that will lead you to feel successful.
And provide enough flexibility, right, to move with what needs to be moved. I think you said it earlier, and you didn't say it on our talk, is people need to set realistic expectations of what they can accomplish in a particular period of time. And, just to highlight what you said earlier about overwhelm, I always say this as well, is overloaded and overwhelmed are two different things. And so you need to deal with them separately, just like you talked about the parked car, right? And if you've got too much stuff in your car that's weighing your car down while you're going, you're going to need to throw a few things out the window or stop, drop them off, and get back on the road, right? So using your analogy, is there two different things? So that's what I hear you saying in this, is that flexibility, giving yourself that space. Of course, if you only book half of your time, you're not going to be overloaded, right? Because you're giving yourself that flexibility. And I think that's the biggest thing that people do, is they overcommit. And so that's definitely an important tip, is to use that as a rule of thumb.
The word that I use is make sure it's sustainable.
Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Dave, for being here and sharing your rules and your insight. And, again, we're going to be posting in the show notes where you can join Dave for his 1,000 True Fans, his Facebook group, where he's going to be sharing some of these principles and more for free, so to support you in your business. So thank you, Dave, for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me. This was very exciting for me.
That's great. And thank you all for being here. And I know that there's a nugget or two that you've taken away that's going to make a difference for you. And that's all that matters, right? You don't need to take away 10 from each show every week. If you take one nugget and you put it into practice, right, week after week, and you put them into practice, that's huge. So whatever you took from today is what you needed. So thanks for being here. My name is Penny Zenker, and this is Take Back Time. We'll see you in the next episode.
Thank you for listening. Today's topic is another opportunity for you to put the knowledge you learned into practice. Tune in again next week for more strategies that will help you have more energy and focus to get more done in less time, so you can continue to take back time.